Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how you can produce an aluminium tray with nice soldered corners, something like this. You are going to start with a blank piece of aluminium. The next step would have the corners cut out ready for folding, and then soldering will be the last step. So let's start with the marking up. Now I've already done 2 lines where I intend to make folds. Now I'm going to do the 3rd line. The tools you'll need is one's called a scribe, and this has pointy ends to scratch on the metal, and a steel ruler. Now, aluminium is quite a soft metal, so it will scratch and indent quite easily. Remembering that a steel ruler starts from 0, good quality control measure is to put it right on the edge of the metal, double check your markings, and then a little scratch on the surface. I'm going to do the same at this end. So I'm looking for 15 millimeters, double check, and then I'm ready to line up those markings and score on the surface of the metal. Okay. Now, you should be just about able to see where those lines are. Okay, now to make it easier to fold up, it helps to have tiny little holes at those joints. So I'm going to use a cordless drill with a 2mm drill bit. Just on this, if you're ever using a cordless drill, this thing here is called the chuck, and that's what holds the drill bit, and I would never hold the chuck during operation. Now before I drill, I'm actually going to leave an indentation where I plan the holes to be. I'm going to use a punch, and this punch is lined up with where the folds are going to be. I just tap there, so you carefully line it up, and then tap with the hammer. That's going to help just guide the drill bit through. Now always use a bit of scrap underneath, because you don't want to drill into your table surface. And pull gently on the trigger, straight down. And then straight back up. Another safety measure I'm following is I'm really gripping hold of this material tightly. I don't want that to spin around. I could clamp it for extra security, but I know I've got enough pressure using my hands to keep it still. Again, line it up, straight down. And then straight back up. Now be careful, because sometimes when it bursts through, it leaves a bit of a sharp edge. We call that a burr. Now, next thing to cut the corners off, we're going to use these things called tin snips. Basically like a big pair of scissors. And we're going to cut the corners off. The force here is called shearing, which is where 2 blades pass from another. So as I shear the metal, line it up carefully, press down, it will just cut. I only want to go as far as that hole. And then I'm going to change direction, open the shears again, open the tin snips and cut down, and that bit will just then pop off. Now be careful, again, this has got sharp edges there, burred as well. And then the other side, you double check the position, get it lined up perfectly, and make sure your fingers aren't in the way. Careful not to go beyond the hole. Well, I've gone a little bit beyond, so should have been more careful there. And one more. Okay, now I'm ready to do the folding, so let's move on to that step. Right, the next step is to use this piece of equipment called a metal folder. Now I've positioned the aluminium over this edge here, and this machine has been clamped tight, positioned where the aluminium will be folded. It's got 2 handles underneath, and all we do is we lift it gently up, paying careful attention to make sure we go up to a sort of 90-degree position. Lean in, have a look, make sure we're happy with it, keep going until we are happy. Okay, that's looking good. One thing just to point out is you need to make sure that this top bar is securely fastened. So that's one part then done. If we undo this, slide it out, you can see one side is done. Now we're going to move to fold the other 2. Now it would be impossible to get this back in the metal folder, so for the next side it's already been set up. Got a bit of scrap material been positioned in the vise, and we're using just a mallet here because that's softer than the aluminium, so it's not going to damage the surface. And you just gently tap it over until you're happy. as you can see, glancing blows, moving back and forth until you get a nice fold up. Now this is ready for soldering. Okay, next step is actually soldering these joints. Now what I've done is I've positioned it in a vise, and we're going to be using a blowtorch. So this is going to make the metal very hot. So that's why I've got heat-proof gloves on. I'm also wearing an apron and goggles so that there's no chance of any risk of it burning my clothes, my skin, or anything getting into my eyes. First thing you have to do is actually scrape the material, okay, where you're going to solder. That's because it has an oxide layer, and that is not going to create a very nice joint. It won't solder very easily. So I just clean the edges where I want the solder to flow. Maybe this wire brush. Okay. Once that's done, I then need to get the metal at its temperature. So I'm going to get my blowtorch going. This is my soldering rod, which is going to melt in place. Now we don't put that directly in the heat. What we do is we warm up the metal first. It's going to take a minute or so. Keep the heat centered on the spot where it's going to be soldered. You might want to do both sides. Now, I can test it. So it's not ready yet, it's not quite flowing. Still needs to heat. As we're working, this metal's getting hotter and hotter, so we're definitely not going to touch it. So now, there we go. As you can see, it left a nice neat solder joint. That now needs to cool. If I were to touch it, I would certainly only do it with heat-proof gloves, and even then it might only be for a second. We could put it directly into water, so there you go.